Population. Before going into the lesson, let us imagine the world without human beings. Is it possible to imagine the world without human beings? Then who will create the social atmosphere and who will create this cultural environment? So, practically, it is impossible to imagine a world without human beings. So, now let us move on to understand the importance of people, that is population. People are the main and the pivotal point when it comes to social sciences, because we have resources in the nature which are being utilized or which are to be identified and to be made as their best use by the human beings or the people of that particular country. So, for any country to develop, in the similar way, for any country to understand its progress, when we say a country is developing or a country is progressing, the people play a major role for that. When we get any natural calamities, tsunamis, cyclones, we understand that we lose people more than the infrastructure or the other facilities. So, when we talk about the people, in order to identify the resources, in order to utilize them properly, in order to develop any nation, whatever we talk, we are closely associated with the people of that particular country. So, in social sciences, people is a very important, and it's the heart of the social sciences in anywhere, in any country, because every country is nothing but a nation where the people live, maybe having some commonalities. Now, moving on to understand here, the development of the economy of any country or the society develops when people are developing. When an individual is developing, the family develops. After the family develops, he starts to pay the taxes. The nations develop. So, if every individual is developing, every family develops. The society develops. The country ultimately reflects the development of that particular people who are present. And the resources will show us what is the importance of the people. The people understand the importance of the resources and utilize them very effectively. Then only a country can progress, an individual can progress. When a calamity comes or when any disaster occurs, we lose most of the human beings. That's why when any natural calamity threat is being found, for example, if any cyclones are found, we have a threat that the coastal areas will be massively affected by the cyclones. Then the governments of that particular region or the state or the nation would advise the people, those who are living in the coastal areas, to move to the higher elevated places in order to save that human resources, in order to save the people. Because if we have people, we can recreate the resources what we have there. We can utilize them properly. So, even the natural calamities also shows us the importance and the value of the people. So, we need to save our human life on a very larger scale, especially when calamities occur. And the best understanding is that in this world or on our planet Earth, the producers are people as well as the consumers are also people. People start to produce by making crops, rice, wheat, barley, whatever it is. They manufacture the products, they create certain products, they invent certain products, they change the old forms into the new forms, and they make the maximum efforts to give something into the market. When some product is being brought into the market, people are directly involved in making that particular product. In the similar way, in the market or in the shops or in the shopping malls, wherever we go, the products which are ready for sale are again bought by another set of people. So, here also we have people who purchase them, who utilize them, who actually consume them. So, the producers are also people, the consumers are also people. So, we need to understand here that people play a major role in producing the products as well as in the utilization of the products. And census. Census gives us a picture how many people are living in that area and what is the total population of that particular country, state or a region. The first census in India were taken in 1872 by the Britishers, later again in 1881. From 1881 onwards, for every 10 years, it has become a custom to record the census of our country. Now, by taking the census, what do we focus on? In this lesson, we focus on the population and the size and the distribution of the population. What is the total population of our country and what is actually the distribution of the population? Is it equally distributed in all corners and all regions of any nation, or is it differently distributed? This point we will be understanding through this lesson. And the population growth, how rapidly is the population growing? Is there any decade when the actual population came down than its regular rate of increasing, and how is it changing? That will be the second point of focus in this lesson. And the third point, we are going to discuss about the characteristics of the population in this lesson. So let us move on to understand population size and distribution, which is the first main focus in this lesson. India's population size and distribution. As per the census released on March 2001, the total population of India was 1028 million. We crossed 1 billion mark, and as per the census given in 2011, the Indian population is 121 million. So now when it comes to here, this population of 1 million above, 1 billion above stays randomly or rapidly spread over in 3.28 million square kilometers. Now we get a fundamental doubt. Are these people living equally distributed in all corners of the nation? No, we are absolutely wrong when it comes to that point, because we have a state called Uttar Pradesh where the maximum number of people live here. That is, UP has 166 million people, which accounts for total 16% of the entire India's population lives only in one particular state. When it comes to the other states, like other hand, Haryana and Sikkim, all together we have 0.5 million people staying there. One hand, we have one state having 166 million. On the other hand, we have Haryana and Sikkim staying or comprised of population 0.5 million. And when it comes to Lakshadweep, we have less than a million here, less than a lakh actually the population, that is just 60,000 people staying in the islands of Lakshadweep. So the population is not at all equally distributed. It varies from place to place, region to region. The entire population of India, most of the population lives only in 5 major states, that is Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh. Together we have half of the population living in these 5 states. And when it comes to Rajasthan, Rajasthan is the largest area occupying state, where its population is 5.5% in the entire India's population. So like this, the population size and it is randomly distributed. Uttar Pradesh with a maximum populous state, while in coming to Sikkim and Haryana, lowest populated states. Well, understanding the distribution, 5 major states in India comprise more than 50% of the entire India's population. Those are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh. Rajasthan, though being the largest state, the population percentage was not quite relevant to its area's size. So like this, India accounts for 2.4% of the entire world's area when it comes to in terms of area, but it is having large population and the second most populous state in the world. This is about the population size of India. Now, understanding India's population distribution by density. What is density? Density is nothing but the number of people living in per unit area. For example, the number of people living in per unit, let us take as 1 kilometer. So 1 square kilometer area, number of people living in that particular area is known as density. So density is nothing but taking the people into count of the people living in one area along the all four sides. So 1 square kilometer area, how many people are living, is known as density. And according to the census of 2001, the density of India per square kilometer is 324. It got raised up to 382 as per the 2011 census. So the population per every square kilometer, you find 382 people living in that area. So you may get a doubt. Is it common in the entire nation? No, absolutely not. It is different. For example, in the state like West Bengal, as per the 2001 census, you have 904 people living in 1 square kilometer of area. It is 3 times larger than, or 3 times got multiplied than the average density of India. In India, averagely we have 308 for overall nation. But when it comes to West Bengal, we have 900 plus, that is 3 times double than the national average. Just on the other hand, when it moves on to Arunachal Pradesh, you find per square kilometer only 13 people. So this is less than 10% of what the average India's density is. So the density also keeps changing. We have just discussed the average density, but in West Bengal you have 3 times larger than the national average, while we have in Arunachal Pradesh less than 10% of the national average. So the density also varies from place to place, region to region. Let us now find out in which state do we have very less than the national average population. That is, in Assam we have very less to very less national average, or the average of the density where the people live here. The reason behind this one is, basing on the terrain of the region, the Assam is a land where we have many hills which are dissected and which are mostly roughly natured. The terrain itself is very rough and the soil availability is very low, not suitable for living, not suitable for cultivation. Like these all features accounted for having less number of population living in Assam. While coming to the northern plains of Kerala region, in the northern part of Kerala, the entire land is very plain, fertile, and the soil availability is abundant, where it gives a very fertile plain for cultivation. So this made Kerala to have more population when compared to Assam region. So the relief features of that particular region also contribute on a larger scale for making the people to get settled in that particular region. So density is directly related with the relief features of that particular region. Now, the population growth and processes of population change. How is the population changing? How is it growing? First of all, let us understand how is the rate of growth of population in our country. The dynamic phenomena, yes, our Indian population growth has always been dynamic. The figures, the numbers has always been changing. Every year they grow on continuously. So there is no stable number to determine India's population. Every year they go on increasing. That's why we call it as a dynamic phenomena which changes continuously. The rapid change in the numbers what we have for the India's population. Now, the growth numbers which are added up for every year, the number of people or the number of population, the number of births which are taking up adds on to the population of the entire nation. So the existing population plus adding over the new births gives rise to increase in the population, and these birth rates will be calculated on the topic of rate of increase. At what rate of increase is our India's population increasing? At what percentage the population is increasing? This percentage of increase for every year when they calculate, that is called the annual growth rate. For every decade we take the census. For every year when we are calculating the percentage of the growth rate, then it is called as annual growth rate. And India's population from 1951 to 20 means 2001, we have 361 million in 1951, which rose to 1028 million. Further it went extending to 1021 million, which means that correction here, 121 crore population, which has crossed already so much. Now 15.5 million is an annual increase in the India's population every year, which means that every year we get 15.5 million new births happening in our country. So new population gets adding on for our existing population, which is actually troubling the resources, because when population increases, the number of people utilizing the natural resources will also automatically increase. So that natural resources, the environment, has to be preserved carefully when the population increases, because this directly affects that factors. Later we have certain declining trends when it comes to the birth rates, but the declining trends are very less. So by 2045, how many efforts are made also, India would very soon may take over the population over China, and by 2045 India may be branded as the most populous country in the world. India occupies 2.4% of the land area, while the population contribution will be increasing from 16.6% to 18% of the entire world's population. So now let us identify what brings change in the population. There are three major subtopics which bring changes. Those are the birth, the death, and the migration. That changes the entire dynamics of the population. Let us throw light on them. Now let us move on to understand the processes of population change. The main factors which determine, as I mentioned earlier, birth, death, and the migrations. Birth, when we say birth rate, we take into consideration. What is this birth rate? The birth rate is the number of live births per 1000 births is called as birth rate. Birth rate. The birth rate means the number of live births per 1000. This birth rates, when they are increasing in our country, this automatically will increase, or it show its impact on the population rise. When it comes to the death rates is similarly like the birth rate, the number of deaths happening per 1000. Up to 1981, we used to have a large difference between the birth rates and the death rates. So we used to have the population balance during that period. But now the death rates have reduced a lot and the birth rate has increased a lot. So these trends have been changing. After 1981 and 1991, the birth rates are also declining, the death rates are also declining. So again the population increase has always been a regular phenomena in our country. Third important factor, that is the migrations. Migrations are internal and international. First of all, what is a migration? Migration is nothing but the movement of the people from one place to the another place. They migrate for various reasons. When they are migrating within the country, that is known as internal migration. So the migrations can happen within the state or intra-state also can be considered as internal migrations. For example, a country like India, where we have 29 states and 7 union territories, people regularly migrate from Andhra state for getting a better opportunity in the city of Bangalore. So when we talk about Bangalore, people of Andhra are moving to Bangalore So here we are having interstate migration, but this is an internal migration within the country. When we are migrating from another district to Hyderabad, here within the state we are migrating. So intra-migrating or interstate migration altogether combinedly called as internal migrations. When we are moving from one country to another country, that is called international migrations. So for example, when any employee is employing one person from India to Dubai, so a family of India has to move to Dubai. So there they are doing international migration. First we shall focus our attention on internal migrations. How are the internal migrations happening in our country? Is it very high or very less? In 1951, the migrations percentage was the people moving from rural areas to urban areas was 17%, while now it is 27 to 30%. Earlier in 1991, we used to have 23 cities which are above million plus population. The number has gone up to 35 cities in 2001, which means the rate of increase or rate of migration of the people from the rural areas to the urban areas has increased a lot. What are the push factors which pushed the people from the rural areas to the urban areas? We all know in India we have lakhs of villages. In these villages, the basic facilities are very less. We don't have proper job opportunities for the population who are living there. So, because of poverty, because of unemployment, people try to find out some solution in order to eradicate their poverty. They want a better opportunity for them to earn something and to live happily. People migrate from rural areas to urban areas. This tendency, in order to eradicate poverty and to live a better life, many lakhs of people have crossed their villages and moved to the nearby cities. That's why in the cities we have change of dynamics. When rural areas, people are moving towards the urban areas, the urban area population is again disturbed now. We get distribution variation there. This migration, which we named as internal migration, do not affect the entire India's population, but it affects the distribution of the population. Till yesterday, that village may be having a density of 200 to 400 population, but today after the migration happened, the density may fall down to 100 or 150. So this brings the changes in the distribution and the density of India's population. Now the cities are overcrowded, whereas villages are less crowded. This phenomena gives us a rise to study some more topics in detail, what we get affected with this internal migrations. Let us study on those topics. Now, the age composition. What is the necessity for us to study about the age composition? Generally, any country has a population which is a combination of different aged groups of population. For example, we have children, we have men who are working, we have grandparents who stay, which comprise a family. So, it is very clear for us that in any country you have different aged people living together. This is called age composition. Now, coming to the importance of why do we need to study about the age composition, the age is a determining factor which determines for us the capacity and the capability of a particular individual. If he is in the working age, that shows for us that he can work effectively for long hours. If he is an overaged person, it shows that he cannot work effectively for hours. So in order to understand the capacities and the capabilities of any person and the nation also on an overall, we can go through the age composition. That is the reason why a person's capabilities can be clearly estimated by his age. So age plays a very vital role on the capacity of his work nature. Now let us understand India's population. India's population is broadly been categorized into three groups. The first one, the children. The children are less than 15 years of age are considered as children. This group of people are completely coming under the category of unproductive group, because the children do not work and they need food, cloth, education and also medical care a lot, which the parents have to take care of them. When I say that children do not work, I am not mentioning about the people where the underprivileged categories of families send their children to work. I am not discussing about the privileges of the people. I am generally discussing about the natural condition where we are not permitted to work up to 15 years. It is better to get them educated. So in that condition, the children are coming under the category of unproductive and they need support like food, cloth, education and medical care. Someone has to take care for them. When coming to the working age, the second group, we have the age coming under the bars of 15 to 59, where these people are economically very productive. On the basis of these people only, the family's entire income runs and also the nation's income runs, and very useful not only for the family but also for the nation. And this age is also considered as biologically the reproductive age, where they can give birth to their next generation people also. So like this, the children and marriages, this all happens during this particular age. And moving on to the third age group, that is our third bifurcation, aged group, that is above 65 years. These people can also be economically productive, but still they cannot work so effectively, so energetically when compared to the previous group people. So they work voluntarily, and here their contribution also can get some economically valuable, but still the working age is considered as a very important age for any country's progress. Now the sex ratio. When I say about the sex ratio, I am talking about the number of females per 1000 males. I am talking about the combination of the males and the females. That is the reason why it is named as sex ratio. So as per 2001 census, we have 938 females per 1000 males. Always in our country there has been an unequal ratio, where we have always been unjustified towards the females, because when we observe at various regions, we find that variation. In Kerala, you find 1058 to 1000 males, while in Pondicherry were quite positive results, 1001 to 1000. When it comes to states like Delhi and Haryana, they are 821 per 1000, 861 per 1000, where the figures are really worrying us when it comes to the equality of males and females. In North India, we have the serious concerns which has to be addressed at a high time now, which has to be taken seriously. So the number of females per 1000 males is known as sex ratio. In 2001, India's sex ratio is 938 per 1000 male members. The literacy rates. What is India's literacy rate? Before understanding what is India's literacy rate, who is called as a literate? What is the criteria to say that this person is a literate person? Let's find out that. Any person who is aged 7 and above and who can read and write by himself is known as a literate. According to the census, any person who is aged 7 and above and who can read and write by his own is known as a literate. So, literacy plays a very crucial role in any country's development. Why literacy plays a very crucial role in any country's development means that the people will be having a choice, or they can make some intelligent decisions when they are educated, when they are literate people. When the government is trying to bring certain policies, the literate people will be able to understand what was the intention of the government in making this kind of policy. When we have illiterate people, the government policy, though the government makes a very good policy, that cannot be understood properly by the illiterates, which brings a serious obstacle for the implementation of the policy, and also it is a serious hindrance for the development of the nation. Coming to India's literacy rate. India's literacy rate is 64% according to 2001 census to 65%. Now, again when we take the census separately for men and women, men have 75%, women have quite less than that. So, again we have differences in this one. We have certain countries which still have larger literacy rate, like Korea, where they have 97% to 98%, countries like Japan, where the people are almost all are literates and they can understand the government policies better. They contribute for the development of the nation by understanding the policies. Well, in this uneducated, illiterate people will be an obstacle for the development and also an hindrance for the government to implement the policies. So, literacy rate also plays a very vital role in development of any nation. Now, occupational structure. Division of the people into different categories basing on their occupations is known as occupational structure. So, the occupational structure has again three bifurcations here basing on the departments or the sectors where they are working. For example, if they are working in the agriculture, fishing, mining, these all come under the category of the primary. When they are working in the industrial and the manufacturing sectors, they come under secondary. When they are working in any service oriented sectors, they come under tertiary sector. So, now the population is completely categorized basing on their works into three major categories. But when do we call a country a developed country or a developing country determines on the percentage of the people working in different sectors. For example, India is a developing country because in India we have 64% of people working in the primary sector, while 13 to 20% of the people are engaged in secondary and the tertiary sector. So, any country where the maximum number of people are working in the secondary and the tertiary sector, that country is called a developed nation. For example, let us take United States of America. In United States of America, the percentage of people working in the primary sector are 3 to 5%, while the rest will be working in the secondary or the tertiary sector. In the similar way, when it is quite opposite to India, in India we have 65 to 70% people working under primary sector, whereas the secondary and the tertiary sector comprise of only 20 to 30%. That's why United States of America is a developed nation while India is still a developing country. So, basing on the works of the people also, the future and the determination of the country determines. In the international standards, India is still considered as a developing country because India's large population is engaged in agriculture, which falls under the category of primary sector. So, that's what the occupational structure also plays a vital role in determining the country's development, progress, and understanding whether a country is a developed country or a developing country. Health. Health is a serious concern because it affects the process of development. If a person is not healthy, if he is not fit and fine to work, this disturbs the work of the other people also, because everybody's work is interconnected with the other person's work. For example, in an office, if the lower clerk doesn't work, the above officer who is relying on the work of the clerk gets disturbed. The above officer who is working on his subordinates' work will get disturbed. So it's a chain which is connected that gets completely disturbed when people are unhealthy and when they do not perform their work properly. So that will directly influence the development of any particular nation. So government efforts are being very sincere, and the sustained efforts of the government have proved very effective. When we look at the statistics, it is very clear. The death rates were earlier 1000, for every 1000 they were 25, while they have fallen down to 8.1 for every 1000, and the life expectancy increased from 36.7 in 1951 to 64.6. It was a tremendous achievement. Even though government has achieved a lot and government has increased the medical facilities reachable to many thousands of people, many dispensaries, many primary healthcare centers are being established, still in India, health has been a major concern, because the safe drinking water and the basic amenities are not available to more than 2/3 of the rural population, and per calorie consumption in India still is below the recommended rate, which resulted in the malnutrition of the population. So safe drinking water, basic amenities, per calorie consumption are still not up to the required level, and only 1/3 of the rural population are able to access to the safe drinking water. So these all are the serious concerns, which serious problems have to be tackled with the perfect policy plan, so that all these problems are being eradicated from our country. Now, the adolescent population. India's greatest significant feature is that India has 1/5 of the entire total population coming under the category of adolescent population. What is this adolescent population group? The group of age from 10 to 19 years is known as adolescent population, who are the very important resource for any country, because they are the future citizens or the working population who contribute a large for the nation, for the growth of the nation. We can have scientists, engineers, doctors coming from that particular groups. So this particular group people have to be fit, fine and healthy for any nation to develop. But when it comes to the concerns, the nutritional requirements are very high to this group people when compared to the other groups of the people. So this group people required high nutritional food. In practicality, in India, we don't have that much of the nutritional foods available to the people of this age group, and especially in girls. Many of the girls in India are suffering with anemia, where the girls of 10 to 19 years of age are not getting the complete nutritional food which is required as per their age requirement, which affects the girls to many serious confrontations. And also we have to create awareness to the people, especially to the parents of the girl's child, that they need to be provided with good nutritional food so that we can have healthy children in future. And they should be first healthy, then only the nation will be automatically healthy by getting healthy children in future. So the major serious concern is that adolescent population should be getting high nutritional food when compared to the other aged group people. So the National Population Policy. Government of India has taken a comprehensive family planning program. After the efforts all were culminated, the National Population Policy came into force with the efforts of the Government of India. Since from 1952, they are planning to have a healthy family and also to have voluntarily parenthood, taking a proper care of their children. So this policy came into existence in 2000, where it has brought certain rules and regulations which are to be implemented strictly and followed by all people. What are those? Among them, the important are free and compulsory education for the children up to 14 years of age, which creates awareness for the children of their rights and duties. And the infant mortality rate has to be reduced from 30 per thousand births which are happening in our country to very low level, and to acquire or to attain universal immunization for the children, because the polio drops campaigning programs, smallpox campaigning programs, all are initiated to have healthy society in future. And they also targeted the girls who are facing lot of problems because they are getting married at the age of adolescence, where actually they need lot of healthy food at that point of time, which is very rich in the nutritional value, but they are not given that, but still they are forced to get married. So the marriage to the girls has to be delayed so that they acquire certain physical fitness for them to remain healthy in the process of bearing their children. And also the adolescence was a main target of the government through this policy. They wanted to create awareness among the adolescent age group that the unwanted pregnancies or the sexually transmitted diseases, all these risks have to be reduced, means the adolescent group has to be created awareness for that, that this should not be done. This is a problem when we do this kind of things. So when this awareness was created in the people, and also not only just putting it in the place of laws and the law books, they also tried to give nutritional food through service organizations, and to stop the child marriages before the age of 18 for the girls, and giving legal assistance for that one, to stop all these things, because government already identified that the people are the most valuable resource of any nation, and they provide the potential power of any nation to grow and to have a sustainable development. So a population of any nation is the most valuable resource which knows how to utilize the other natural resources very effectively, and this gives a potential power to any nation to have proper development, leading to the growth of a nation into a normal developing nation to a developed nation. That is the reason why population in social sciences has a very, very important and valuable place.